The next speaker is going to be Maximiliano Noce.
In Fortinet?
He works in Fortinet, that is a very renowned company providing infrastructure in cybersecurity. And he's a system engineer team leader. Thank you, Maximiliano. Thank you for being here. Not only do we have him as a speaker, but also Roxanne Brun, that is Argentine and Brazilian. How many Brazilians do we have in the room? Wow, so many. It's a quasi-Brazilian school, an Argentinian as well. It's like Roxana. Okay. Okay, Maximiliano, the floor is all yours. First and foremost, thank you very much for your time. First and foremost, thank you very much for inviting me. I work in Fortinet, so I've been in the company for the last 9 years, and I've been working in this company for a while. I have seen its evolution or how the company evolved. And let me tell you the prediction that we made 10 years ago, and right now, this is mirrored in the cybersecurity strategy that all organizations should address. But I put this, or I compile it in a presentation. So you can ask questions on any topics that are not clear or that you want to delve into. Let's start with a question. If I were given the opportunity to time travel and to talk to yourself in the past, and it's not a Back to the Future movie that you're gonna disappear if you find yourself in another timeline. No, it's you're talking to yourself in the past, and probably you can give a tip. What would you tell yourself? Buy bitcoins. Yeah, I am always told the same thing. It's a very good idea, right? To study cybersecurity as a major at the university, great. To study that early on is very profitable. But we ask those questions to cybersecurity practitioners in the industry from many organizations. We conducted a survey in the United States, and we gave them this chance. If you were to speak to yourself in the past to make a decision or transformation in your career, what would you have done? And here, these are some of the answers. Some of them said that they could have planned better their bandwidth needs to substitute technologies by solutions that they work together to hire more personnel, to have a single provider or security provider instead of many. But I focus on these two. There are two bars here, one in blue and one in purple, because one thing is what we ask the organizations that they have fewer than 1,000 employees, probably a small, medium-sized company, probably for Latin America. The employees change in number, but in purple we have the SME and the blue large corporations. And let me tell you that the answers in small and medium-sized companies, they wanted more personnel, whereas large corporations place priority up on eliminated multi-suppliers, the multi-supplier approach, and to have fewer suppliers. So I take this survey, I, I took this survey and tried to interconnect or correlate a few items. And I was able to draw some conclusions, which is something that you need to work with me. Let's see if we agree. And how can we take this to the cybersecurity arena? What can you see in the picture? Coffee makers. Yeah, coffee makers. I like working with these drawings because it shows me the evolution of this idea. If you see, small size companies were requiring more employees. Large companies wanted to reduce their vendors and consolidate, and both focus on the more primitive point or rudimentary point, that is to face the challenge or to live up to the challenges of cybersecurity nowadays. One is to have more people because they cannot deal with the complexity and the so many resources they have. And on the other hand, there's such a wide range of solutions and dispersity that I cannot operate them. That's why I would like to have convergence. In both things, we talk about complexity. And I like the coffee makers because this is a historical evolution in coffee making. Here we have a cafeteria that one may find in one of the bars dating back to the 30s, 40s in Buenos Aires. I don't know if you're operating a machine like this one. It's not very intuitive, but this I'm sure that it require that the coffee maker or the operator had the necessary training or expertise because it was complex. And nowadays, as any coffee maker, the result that he's delivering is coffee. With coffee like this, we basically had the same coffee with the similar features, live up, living up to the same challenges in complexity. And then we evolved and we have the espresso machines. And these are the ones that we find in the late 90s, or as of the late 90s. If we take a closer look at this, the result or the output is the same. That is coffee of similar quality that and the one that we had with this original machine. However, the features right now are more intuitive. By reading the handbook, pressing buttons, the 7 or 8 buttons, we're okay. I don't require a technician to train me on how to operate it, and then I had to replace water and coffee, the input. And lastly, we have the capsule coffee makers, the Nespresso, that even the dumbest person can operate it by just pulling the lever. Basically, you can make your coffee. We may argue that the output of coffee is it different? No, it's going to be the same, uniform. The material, the raw material is basically the same. It's coffee and water, not anything magic. But we have reduced the automation process, the complexity of the machine. And let's see how we reduce the process, the complex process. This works with steam. You need to load water. You have special valves, keys. It's very complex. On the other hand, this one, the espresso machine, has special features that make the complexity of operations be managed by a microchip and 2 or 3 internal valves driven by electricity, and we're okay. And then this one, the last one, there's no complexity. That is basically intrinsic in the supply chain of coffee. I'm not requesting anything complex from that coffee maker. And instead of selling me beans of coffee, you can sell the capsules with the different strains of coffee. And as if by magic, you have the same coffee or better coffee. I mean, we have the same complexity. We need boiling water, coffee, beans, etc. So what we're doing is to mitigate the complexity and retouring that complexity to the supply chain in this case, or by mechanical and automation components to the second machine in this case. So, what I bring to the table is, can I get rid of the complexity of cybersecurity? Either you're not answering, either you're not answering, or you're doubting. There's a law that is called Tesla law. The Tesla law is used in web design, and that is that the complexity cannot be eliminated. There's a point where complexity cannot be reduced any longer. Eventually, yes, I can disguise it, phase out, or hide it, but it's going to be there. In UX, we worked to a certain point that if it's too easy for the operator, it loses flexibility or agility. But this is invention was through time. Before, with programmers, they use assembler, the, the web machine program. In my case, I didn't use it, and thank God I didn't use it because we migrated the complexity of speaking to the language of the machine to the compiler, or we program in C, C++, so we use a language programming software that ends up translating this machine language. Is magic. You have a compiler, and it's great, but the complexity is the same. I speak with machines. So we migrate the complexity to other parts of the process. And we can think and apply it to other things, many other things like the cloud. We are deploying a new application on the cloud, and in that case, we are empowering that application to a third party, a cloud service in this case. For example, we had a client that was deploying an app that required database and calls me and says, Maxi, it became critical and I wanted to have in high availability. So I need to have two or three that are redundant in the case one falls. So you'll have high availability in the databases as well. No, but that is required by the database people, but you need to talk to them, I said. Why? Okay. And I need a file server with synchronicity with all the applications. And he tells me, no, we don't have synchronicity in between. But I said, okay, you need to implement that. And you will need two servers and a redundant application that goes to the network. And when we performed the analysis after 3 months, we wanted to um, have the database operational. And I said, is it worthwhile to continue? Why don't we work with a cloud service? And he said, I don't know if it's going to work, but let's try. I said, we went to a cloud or a public cloud provider. We said, upload redundant database. In 2 clicks, you had the redundant database. Uploading, redundant server, clicked, 2 minutes. Redundant share file server. In 2 hours, we had that application operational. So we outsourced the complexity to a third party. We didn't eliminate the complexity. It was exactly the same database, the same file server that was running on top. But that infrastructure right now is outsourced to the cloud service that we pay a service, and it's expensive. I'm not saying that it's cheap. But these are things that are happening, and we need to deal with that complexity. And when we speak of cybersecurity, it's exactly the same thing. In these same surveys, or survey, these companies that were surveyed were asked what is the percentage of companies that dedicate more than 30% of their time to troubleshoot problems related to complexity. And those that have more than 10 cybersecurity suppliers, like one in Denmark, Fireworks, a server, 82% of the respondents said that they are dealing with integrating and complexity among all the tools. But those that they have one or three suppliers, only 18% were involved in troubleshooting that complexity. And there's a point here, a good point, because these statistics reveals how effective the way is going to be. So, faced with complexity, what are we going to do? And here I have the hypothesis that comes from the 40s and is what we raised and it became a market standard for cybersecurity. With any provider that you may speak with, regardless, he's going to talk about the cybersecurity fight. That is something that dates back to 2015. And if you talk to the Gartner Group, he's going to talk about the cybersecurity mesh, and other brands are going to sell this, a cybersecurity platform that is wholly integrated because it's necessary, because this is what we find nowadays. Let's speak of cybersecurity. Not of coffee making. Although I'm an expert in coffee makers and cybersecurity, we're going to deal with cybersecurity. We have the technology pillar in this case, processes, and also people. Nothing new, right? For those of you that work in this field, this is like the Bible. It's a given. And here, we need to think the current scenario that we're faced with because it may seem nice, but then you need to put it in context. And the current status that we have is that there we have challenges of remote working. I may find in a whole number of corporations that during the pandemic they had to provide remote access to users and resolve issues of access that were never conceived for that purpose. The most prevalent case was a corporation that carries electricity, and the operators of the power plants did not have remote access and they were not allowed to circulate in the streets or to travel in the streets. So in 3 days, we had to deploy a safe remote access, a secure remote access, to operate the data centers that they were behind closed doors and they could only be operated by them. This happened during the pandemic, especially, and right now we return to the offices, to the premises. Many multinationals right now are saying, everything looks nice during the pandemic, but right now let's return to the office, or maybe we can negotiate home office for 2 days, 3 days probably. And we will reach a consensus because it'll give me enough time to be at home without turning our home into offices. In my case, my house is an office. My children, for example, kick me out every time I make calls. They kick me out of a room, etc. But I insist, we are going to reach a balance, and working anywhere is becoming relevant. And then we have digital transformation processes, and this is not new for you, but we find that companies are dealing with many countries that are migrating from the analog to the digital world, where before we had air conditioners and we could cool things down, and we were adjusting the temperature depending on how cold it was with a remote control. And right now we have OTC tools, and based on different parameters or factors makes the decision to change the temperature. That is happening pervasively in the industry. So we need to think with the interconnectivity of these tools. And then we have the evolution of applications. An application implies, well, Maxi, I need to deploy it with a web server, with a database. But right now it's more complex because deploying an app means having a development process that is a box process, a bots process that I'm compiling, deploying, and code, and the applications are changing. So they are not monolithical and micro applications that are working together.
Las desarrollan muchas personas y me exponen a un montón de...
And they expose to many vulnerabilities, libraries that I'm not using. Probably I use 2 or 3, and right now 60. So how can I make sure that these libraries are not subject to vulnerabilities or problem. And then critical mission applications. Have you ever seen the movie Hackers, where with Angelina Jolie? Apágalo, apágalo. In Hackers, in 1994, the bad guy plants a virus that controls the weight of the ship and makes it tipped over. It was impossible to have connectivity in a ship. That was pure science fiction, but the movie is great. Nowadays, with the levels of connectivity that we have at the satellite level, that we have low orbit, medium, and high orbit satellites, the vessel is 100% connected, so I can operate the vessel remotely. So nowadays, we could suffer an attack from that movie in 1994, and it become real. I mean, it cannot tip over the vessel, but or capsize the vessel.
Claro. Bueno, que pierdan los controles o que
Exactly, or to lose control, to lose the containers, or to make it unbalanced. That may happen. We are exposed to that risk, and we gain a lot by providing connectivity. We reduce the risk of sailors or operators in the same vessel. However, we are exposed to cyber attacks. And then we have the environment. We don't have the necessary skilled labor. Going back to the past, in terms of security, there's a high demand right now. I still have to respond 3 or 4 requests per week. The people are seeking people to work as analysts or CISO. I recommended as many as I had. So there's a lack or a shortage of skilled labor. You have budgetary constraints as well. Everybody has budgetary constraints. We have slow procurement processes depending on the organization. And I can tell you that whenever there's a cybersecurity incident and time flies, we cannot afford to open a tender to respond to the incident appropriately because the malware propagated. And that impacts negatively on the way we work. And then we have a serious scenario in this sector of threats because they are on the rise. In Argentina, we suffer many threats affecting the citizenry, and this has affected Chile. In Latin America, this did not happen in the past, and right now, we are an easy target. If I find vulnerabilities, cybercrime can exploit it. So we have a serious scenario related to attacks, threats, and how virulent these attacks are, how they change because they are very serious. And obviously, what companies suffer is the lack of coordination between departments. The cybersecurity department works in this way, IT works uh, heading or looking the other way, IT setting a new different course, and it's very difficult to reach a consensus of convergence. But I am trying to be optimistic here. First, let me address technology. I was speaking of platforms, and you will ask me, okay, what a platform is. Nowadays, let me tell you, if I pick any company at random, I will say, okay, this one. And I'll ask if they have all or what kind of solutions they have. I'm sure that they resort to 20 or 30 manufacturers providing IT, connectivity, cybersecurity. But these are many providers with many acronyms. The CRM, I don't know what, firewall, many acronyms. And if we have a manufacturer, we increase the complexity that I need a device to talk or communicate with the rest of the devices. So at this time, we need to see how we address the complexity. One way of approaching complexities is to integrate platforms. What does it mean? Well, separating. in larger areas or quadrants. First, for example, network security with these three vendors. Probably I can shortlist it to one to cover all needs that I have and come up with a special platform. And then on top of that, I could add XDR and CN or CBOT that could be on top, and they could be from the same supplier to make this application seamless. So I develop a platform that is going to be interoperable with the different platforms within the company that is going to be naturally integrated. And this integration reduces costs, like who is going to support the solution. Because if I have to support 10 solutions, I need to have 3 or 4 suppliers or providers that are going to be the integrators that I'm going to have, I will have to hire to support them. But I could have a single contract for support so I can reduce costs. And generally, this is in line with the level of maturity in cybersecurity because all corporations delegate these areas to IT, infrastructure, and and they try to do what they have is like the best efforts they have. When we have CISO, they come up with a working team, so they they hire a CISO, and it's like the bad guy, the crazy guy that says, okay, we need to change, we need to make these changes, and he doesn't have the number of personnel. So the CISO basically hires or outsource these to third parties to operate these rare things. And then we migrate to 2 or 3 platforms, a minimum number of platforms that they could interact naturally among the 3. Because the CISO will be accompanied by analysts or working together with analysts and other people, and they can optimize and streamline processes, and the integration will be seamless. And we will reduce and troubleshoot the number of problems or issues, and instead of resolving those issues, we will be in line with the corporate strategy and improving the tools and eventually make the business more profitable or to comply or fulfill the objective or the mandate that we have. As Fortinet, this is our message. The core message is providing a solution. We make products out of those rare acronyms of cybersecurity. And on top of that, we assist all organizations along this path of growth. So we come on board with these organizations from the very beginning. Through phase 1, where we're implementing tools that I may have in infrastructure, and then to migrate to a scheme where I can see this cybersecurity in a more holistic way, and I start assessing and correlating information among different platforms, cross vendors, like one in Beacon in Denmark or a server somewhere else. So I could have a dashboard with an operator, and I can improve the decision making process. And in the latter phase, we have automation. What does it imply? Automation is the purpose, the ultimate purpose, to become that machine that you press a button and then basically by lowering the lever, you make the coffee. And you need to operate a large machine that may be too complex. This is the purpose. Automate my solutions, automate and streamline processes of cybersecurity that will allow me or facilitate this with a lower number of people and mitigate the cost. And to be involved in the time that I need for the features that I really need for cybersecurity, because we dedicate 90% of our time to try to increase defense and defend from virus, but that has to work by default. We should be analyzing, assessing, and studying how the malware is propagating to eventually improve the defense. Threat hunting, to protect proactively from the threats and not to go after the alarms or the red flags that are being raised. This is from the point of view of technology. Let's talk about processes. Am I okay with time? Yes? Okay. On the other hand, we have cybersecurity incident management. Do you have a special CSIO? No, we're minority here. We're not cybersecurity officers, most of us. For the rest of you, when you have a cybersecurity incident, we need to adhere to the handbook. It's the same when we have a fire in a plant. In case of fire, there's going to be a procedure handbook. There are going to be people that are going to tell us this is not a fire drill. Take that path, and there's going to be a map that indicating the emergency exits. So there's a plan in place. With cybersecurity, is exactly the same. And why is that? Because if I have ransomware attacks or phishing, I need to resort to the procedure manual that explains clearly how am I going to proceed, what are the stakeholders or incidents involved, and I need to predefine the decision makers in the case or when it comes to making a decision. They need to be involved and they need to be up to speed. What am I referring to? Well, in the case of ransomware, and they infect all servers, IT are running like crazy. What is going to happen across the office is that everybody's drinking coffee and they're all talking and they say, why, this is easy. And then we said, no, there's a problem. It's like having people on fire and then you're drinking coffee because there's nothing that you can do. So when you have a cybersecurity incident, we need to involve all the stakeholders within the organization and they need to collaborate to remediate this situation. And even the top brass or the executives, we have to report the ransomware and what information was vulnerable, was exposed or disclosed, disclosures to the client. We have the PR, the marketing team that needs to be involved, ready, and send a report of what is going on. And that is not going to be sent by cybersecurity. If I have to send a message, I mean, the shares in the stock exchange are gonna fall. I mean, that needs to be dealt by the PR system. Okay, they need to be involved in cybersecurity. The same with the high executives or the finance people. The finance people need to know that before this incident, I need to run and invest in hiring a group of people that can troubleshoot this. For example, do you know if you have a special budget for in the event of emergencies? Probably not. The operational managers, I'm sure that they make allocation or a red telephone, and in the case something breaks, I need to make a call, and it's $10 million that needs to be invested up front. Because if not, the plant is going to go down. In the case of cybersecurity, this may not happen, but it has to happen. So, cyber crime incident management is very important. First, preparation.
Podamos armar los
When I speak of preparation, is that we can come up with the manuals, procedures. Detection and analysis is very important. It's part of the cybersecurity team. When I have, when I need to have the necessary tools to detect and to contain this, and then recover or restore data, and then post-incident activities. Normally, we're not aware of this, but after an incident, when there's a server that is down or that you lose remote access, sometimes we said, okay, leave the things as they are because I need to analyze what is happening. And everybody's knocking on the door and says, no, I need the server up because I need to have the call center operational and we need to do the forensics. This takes time. And we need to have everything well documented, detailed, with the post-incident activities and management that should be performed. And it should be in compliance. Because once you have the alarms and it's on fire, nobody's going to sign. Compliance should be made like basically before the incident. And it could be credential theft, phishing, spam, reaching an email. It could be a ransomware attack, an infected machine, or s- here I'm speaking of cybersecurity, but also there are physical cybersecurity issues like tailgating. People that basically that skip the controls and enter the company. So there are many things that we should take a closer look at, and we should have the necessary processes for every single task. So how do I go about these processes? And this is where in Fortinet we can offer and provide you with services to help organizations to create them. This is important. Why is that? Because it's not trivial. It takes time, it requires all stakeholders involved. How often in your organizations have you tried the contingency plans, the fire drills? Never, never. Once a year. Yeah, the fire drills, contingency plan once a year. You need to try this as well. But isn't it too much? But it's just like the fire drill. You have to do it once a year. But how many fires do I have a year? None. Well, better. In the case of cybersecurity, none, but better. We need to be ready for any occurrences or contingencies. So we need to help organization to perform these incident simulation to optimize and to remediate them. That is very, very important. And then to train people on cybersecurity, like the cybersecurity team and the platform team, and to assess or perform an assessment and preparation of this material. Because whenever we join an organization, they're in different stages with a wide range of products, tools, a cybersecurity team, and this is done. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes they have the resources, but not the processes in place. And sometimes we go with they have processes, people, and probably they need to enhance them or try them. So we can help you with that and remediate or assess the processes. And lastly, we said technology processes, and we need the other pillar, that is people. And let me go back to the same thing. Cybersecurity makes is made up of all of us. The cybersecurity team obviously advocates or defends everybody on the name of cybersecurity. So here we are training the task force. Why is that? Because I may have the best technology, the best system detecting behavioral malware, e-signatures, but if I have a user clicking on links,
Asegurar.
there's nothing that we can do. My son is like a sandbox. I installed a security product software just like us, and the software created alerts everywhere. Alerts were popping up everywhere. And he installed like a kitten that jumps on the screen, the mouse turns into a banana. If he keeps clicking on things, things are gonna happen. So, even though we have good products, if the user is not aware of cybersecurity, this is going to happen. So, it is important to train in cybersecurity the people, everybody. So, we work along these lines to make it as easy or as methodological or interactive as possible and less invasive because we don't want to invade people's time. If it's gonna take time, I mean, you're having a look at my presentation or the PowerPoint, but if I send you the recording and you see it at home, if you have a look at it, you can double click slides and you'll go twice as fast. You're not gonna watch videos, for example. at normal speed. So it has to be interactive, brief, and dynamic, to the point, and clear messages. So all these tools are the ones that we are providing to the marketplace to train users, and we perform assessments where we send our own phishing to try to see if it's detected by our users. So it's a trial and error thing. It's not training, but see if it's successful, and I have to rethink my strategy. But cybersecurity involves training all users. And you're going to tell me, okay, Maxi, why did you tell me all of this in half hour? Because this is unavoidable. This is gonna happen. We are going to have incidents of cybersecurity to a greater or lesser extent. Chaos, catastrophes, probably the network is gonna be down or smaller, but that is gonna happen eventually. As they are bound to happen, we need to be ready. We need to raise awareness. You need to know that when this happens, you don't need to drink coffee. You shouldn't be drinking coffee. There's a procedure handbook in place that you need to follow because this will urge further collaboration to solve things faster. So let's get rid of Thanos for some time. And let me remind you of a case study that we had. It was an exercise with one of our clients. Let me tell you how complex this world of cybercrime is. Because you may think, okay, what you're telling me is very rare, strange. Because cyber crime, organized crime, this is not for me. I mean, in terms, the cybercrime business competes head to head or hand in hand with drug trafficking. The scourge of drug trafficking at a worldwide level, so it's not trivial. There's a lot, but probably we see it as rare. Let's see a case. We have a team that is in Canada. What the Canadian team does is goes to the forums where they sell credentials, where the dark web malware is, hackers, those people that have hoodies, and I mean hackers dress well, better than me probably. They don't use hoodies. So we do proactive research. We do proactive research in the networks, and we do find things. The Canadian team calls me and says, "There's an Argentinian company that you have it very close, and they are selling credentials, access credentials." And we've been talking to the seller to see if that was true, and it is true. So why don't you report this and you help him? So I tried to find that company because we didn't have anything. It was a client of ours, but they bought premise equipment once and they were never in contact with us. So I said, why don't you give me information so I can show this to the client? So sends me the report, and probably, I don't know if you see that, says the organization, the net worth in the stock exchange. As it was an oil and gas company, we're related to the most important oil and gas company in the country. So this is part of this group. It calls attention. So if I have more access, basically, I could relate to the larger companies. And they were selling desktop remote access, direct access to a working station within the organization with administration privileges. You could do anything. And for $200 additional, you were given a malware that could go undetected and noticed by the software implemented in the company. It was a bid. It was $3,300. And for $200 more, the auction said, okay, you have the virus. So it's successful. I mean, it's affordable. 3,300. And you're selling the keys to the company. So did further research and says, can we validate that this access works? Well, here you can find all the machines in Windows, and all these machines were visible. Everything was included in the report. I called a client and I said, I would like to talk to your cyber security officer because we have a concrete cases and we're suspicious that you're under attack. And he tells me, no, there's not a cybersecurity officer here. So who's responsible for this? And he says, me, but you're in work networking. And I told him, this is what happened. He turned pale. He didn't know what to do. And I tell him, you know what you have to do? And he tells me, no idea. I never imagined this could happen. And I tell him, okay, why don't you go and you scale it internally to SEO or whatever and explain the situation because this is serious. And he says, okay. He didn't know what to do. Probably he started crying. I don't know. Basically, 2 days later, he makes a call. He says, Maxi, hello, how are you? I need your service. So I have a special team with incident response. Those are the teams that not only prepare but assist you with an attack. And we started working with him. Obviously, this is a paid service, so we had to wait for the Argentinian times to participate in the bid and all of that. But in 3 days, we were working. We were up and running. So we did the forensics. We found how the malware or how the attacker or the hacker entered. We closed the point of access. We remediated the failure. It was a very old vulnerability that was exploited and detected years ago. But as I don't have a cybersecurity team, and it worked. So he said, the infrastructure guy said, okay, let's continue. I mean, regardless of what was happening. So we cut the access, and problem solved. And right now we have a business with that company to create a cybersecurity team. The attack, yeah, they attacked, they had access, they had the tools deployed to have constant access, and what we did is to mitigate that attack or vulnerability. We erased, we got rid of the access, we took remedial action, and he said, okay, we didn't get rid of the problem, we solved just this, but you need to make improvements to your network. So the client is really trying to hire a cybersecurity chief officer and things like that. But it's gonna take some time and it costs money. It's difficult to find people investing in equipment, in the team. So the better or the sooner we do it, the better. And let me remind you that you need to be ready before these situations, these incidents. Because in this case, we had the team at our disposal, but it cost money. We had to quote these services. The finance guy came and the IT guy says, okay, you need to pay for these services. And the finance guy had to pay. Cybersecurity needs to be pervasive, just like IT, communication. Those are cross-functional areas in our organization. Cybersecurity should be like that. And that is why we need to raise awareness in these processes. Summarizing. Manufacturing integration strategies from fewer to many, or is something that I recommend once we have set the course towards cybersecurity, and automation should be the objective. Our mandate should be automation. All the tools need to be geared towards automation. And how many processes will I be able to automate? And the process is as important as tools or people. I could invest thousands of dollars in cybersecurity with the best of people. However, if I don't have a procedure book or procedures in writing, it's not going to work. And it's not cybersecurity. I mean, it applies for everything. It goes with the processes. We need to try them. We have fire drills. We have contingency plans. Well, this is exactly the same. And finally, fighting complexity in the most optimal way. Remember that complexity cannot be eliminated. There comes a time that it's going to be ongoing, permanent. So based on that, I can change the direction of strategy, I can segregate it, I can migrate it, but it's not going to be eliminated. So I need to think of the best way to reduce it. And that is why many times I say that we need to empower other people, reducing activities. So it's a way of approaching cybersecurity, and it happens in cybersecurity when the CSIO has a titanic assignment of creating this across the organization. It delegates obligations to third parties, and is the way of streamlining complexities. And the most important thing, time flies. So if you're not ready for this, you're going to be in a pickle because undoubtedly this is unavoidable, it's going to happen. So you need to be ready now. The faster, the better. And it's for your personal items as well, for your personal aspect. Probably you never had a problem of ransomware, password problem, but when it happens, you need to have a contingency or a backup plan. How many of you have backup of your WhatsApp? All right. And double authentication factor. In other words, yeah, but you're involved in cybersecurity. That's why you're replying like that. And in Twitter, double authentication factor. Yes, because they hacked me. Ah, okay. Double authentication factor is simple. It's on in all platforms. How do you enable that on your own? How many of you have backup of your computer passwords in a safe way? In my case, I had to explain this to my wife. I said, if I die, these are the master passwords. And she said, I'm not interested really. Good luck. You're not going to have access to anything. I insist, you need to be ready when things happen so you have preparation up front. And this is the key takeaway. And with FortiDart, you can talk later. Whatever you need, I'm going to be at your disposal. You have my QR data, and I will gladly take any questions that there may be in the room. Thank you. Three. Three questions. I forgot about the applause. Remote participants are asking to the ISPs that are small and they don't have a clear vision on how to deal with cybersecurity. What can you recommend to the ISPs on how to deploy a cybersecurity strategy? Because there's a specific case that I will go over very quickly. Medusa finished a public work in the Caribbean country and had the same problem with the time counter and all of that. And eventually, they disclosed what they found. They revealed that. However, authorities denied the cyber attack. First and foremost, it's very important. And frankly speaking, I recommend not to pay because sometimes things are common sense, but when you have to deal with ransomware and they encrypt all the information, it's because the information that they want to steal, they already got it. Ransomware is when I'm destroying the operation because just by mere destroying that. Because if I steal information, I disappear. I don't encrypt things. I disappear. So the moment they encrypt the information and you have to pay for ransom, the valuable information is being encrypted, so you're paying for decrypting the information, but they stole data already. Damage occurred, so it's very important. Yeah, and it makes no sense to pay that ransom. Yeah, there are some people that recover the information, restore the information, but the damage is done. So you shouldn't be losing money. You said, okay, you cannot have access to that. Okay, let's see how I go about it. And also the issue of communication, because not all countries have legislation in place indicating how organizations, private and public organizations, could disclose the issue or an incident of cyber attack. If it's not regulated by law, they will probably deny it. And you need to believe on public domain information in the case or the public or not. However, your reputation may be damaged. For example, with the last attack in the casino, the large casino in Las Vegas, in the Caesar Palace, the stock plummeted. So imagine a cybersecurity incident may affect your reputation and your company be worth half in shares. So if you're not prepared, there are going to be bad things. And I'm sure there's going to be a press release that nothing happened, but that is not an effective press release. You gotta tell the truth, because you tell people that nothing happened and then they disclose all the information, you're being lied twice. So you need to know how you're gonna protect yourselves. A small ISP cannot afford large cybersecurity infrastructure. What I recommend to these medium companies is to speak with the wholesalers, because they do have that mindset in place. So probably they can strike an agreement, an upstream in cybersecurity. They can sell that as a service, so that ISP can have that protection in place without investing in so much capital, and that is in the SLA with the supplier. Sometimes we have many regional ISPs in Argentina, so you need to talk to the wholesaler, to the one that provides the trunking system in the internet that can provide cybersecurity, so you don't have to disburse so much capital and to have the necessary tools. Because if you do not have the tools, it's very, very complicated.
Buenos días. Quería saber si
Morning.
tienen como clientes alguna institución de
Do you have
educación pública
institutions in the public
o
sector as
universidades y
clients? And if so,
cuál es su visión en
what is
relación
your
a la
vision in
conciencia de
connection with
ciberseguridad
the raising awareness in the public sector on the implementation of cybersecurity tools in the many departments? I shouldn't be answering that question. Rosanne should be taking your question. That is responsible for the public sector domestically in Argentina. I can tell you that there's awareness being raised. There are investments being made that are quite high in cybersecurity, and it's not a minor thing. And it's something that is disregarded in Argentina. I mean, it could be Argentina or any other country, but especially in Argentina, we have invested more seriously than before, definitely. Microphone, please. If not, the translator cannot translate. We are trying to see if organizations can develop collaboration among themselves, so they can put an end to the issue that is not in my backyard. It happens to everybody, and apart from politics, is the state that should deploy the strategy of cybersecurity, and they resort to us to bridge the gap. But it has to be a decision on the part of the government, and luckily it's happening in many countries. In connection with the public sector, the decision should be top down. It is important to raise awareness on top, so it could be deployable, because if it's a bottom up approach, we tell them, okay, we cut it right here or discontinued, and we cannot coordinate with other areas to share information. Micrófono. And that is not going to happen. So we need to convince top executives so we can have a top-down approach to increase collaboration and to have it as a key strategy. We're running out of time, I'm sorry. We have other two panelists waiting. But there's another question that is going to be read out by him. What are specific measures are taken by IT governments to strengthen the cybersecurity ecosystem so it could be automated at the OTC level and also being driven by AI? AI, first and foremost, is a double-edged sword where we can automate and streamline actions offensively and defensively. It's good for attackers and it's good for defenders. Those that intend good or that mean well to protect us. But we're protecting many tools. In the case of Fortinet, we have AI deployed since 2002. And basically, our signatures, all the protections downloaded, are developed by AI that does the development and the signature by itself. So in seconds, we can detect an attack or a hacking, and we propagate that signature everywhere. And it took 2 or 3 or 4 days before we had to test and humans to read the code. This is done with AI. Attackers with the AI, they simulate an antivirus. They tell you, okay, this goes through this one, it goes through that one, and they have their own toolkit with AI. The good thing, or the positive thing, is that we are incorporating tools. And in connection with OT in itself, Fortinet is making large investments, and we believe that cybersecurity is critical. And why is that? Because the differentiating factor is different with the environments. The IT environment is for daily operations, and those are investments of 2 or 3, 5 years maximum tops. But for industrial investment, that is a 20-year investment. So you're not changing technology all the time. So if I go and talk to the plant manager, you said, okay, you need to change this and deploy a new technology. The plant manager stops talking to me and will not let me in because the plant installs a machine and the machine needs to be there as a fixed asset for 20 years. And anything that is there shouldn't hinder the production process. Cybersecurity has been involved, and we are trying to understand these ideas, and we are trying to make friends and not fight the production or the OT managers so that cybersecurity could become relevant for them. We have raised a lot of awareness, and as I tell you, it's very, very important, especially if you have an industrial company, to upscale this, because every 10 or 15 years you need to make investments, and for a period of 10 years you're unprotected from cyber attacks that are on a daily basis, and you have more things interconnected. 10 years ago you bought a machine, you had a technician, a period. Right now, by default, that machine connects to the cloud, to the internet, and does its own operations, and the plant manager is used to not to touch things. But the cybersecurity manager needs to know what the processes are like. There's a cultural barrier, an idiosyncrasy that needs to be overcome, and we need to work more smoothly so this could become relevant for all industries and not to wait for another 10 years. Thank you, Maximiliano. I'm sorry, but we have two speakers from Mexico waiting.